I remember the moment like it was etched in fire. The call came in the middle of the morning, piercing the ordinary hum of my day. My father was gone. Just like that. Gone. The words didn't settle in right away. I kept thinking it was some cruel mistake, that I'd wake up from this nightmare, but the silence on the other end of the line confirmed it. My chest tightened, and I could barely breathe as the reality sank in. The house felt heavier, the walls somehow closer, trapping me in a sudden, unbearable emptiness. My wife hovered nearby, murmuring soft words I barely registered. There was a calmness in her voice that didn't match the chaos inside me, a precision in her gestures that felt off. I shook my head, trying to focus on remembering him, but something nagged at the back of my mind. Then, in the middle of sorting papers and final arrangements, I checked the insurance. And froze. I stared at the documents in disbelief, the numbers blurring as my hands shook. $800,000 gone. The insurance payout my father had painstakingly arranged, meant to secure our future, wasn't there. I looked up at my wife, expecting panic, concern, anything resembling grief. Instead, she shrugged, her voice casual as if discussing the weather. "Maybe there's a delay," she said, flipping through her phone like this was a minor inconvenience. My stomach twisted. A delay? $800,000 doesn't just vanish in a delay. My mind raced through every interaction over the past weeks, every small inconsistency I had dismissed. Had she? No, it couldn't be. And yet the way she avoided my gaze, the subtle tightness in her jaw, the casual detachment, it all screamed deception. Anger flared inside me, sharp and consuming, a new fire igniting where shock and grief had ruled. I realized then with a cold, sinking certainty that this was no accident. Someone had taken what was rightfully ours, and my heart pounded with the first spark of outrage. I couldn't stop replaying moments from our life together, each memory twisting into something darker the more I examined it. There were the small things I had ignored, the way she would forget to mention calls from certain relatives, the vague explanations for sudden trips, the way she laughed a little too easily at jokes that seemed cruel. I remembered the evenings when she'd insist on helping with chores, a gentle smile on her face. Yet somehow those smiles always masked impatience, or worse, calculation. I saw now how every gesture of love had been laced with control, how every word of encouragement had subtly undermined me. The contrast between the woman I thought I knew and the one unraveling before me was jarring. She had been warm, attentive, even affectionate, but beneath it, a cold strategy simmered, invisible at first, but now glaring. I felt the weight of betrayal settle deep in my chest, the empathy for my past self mingling with fury at the present. Every memory of kindness now seemed a ruse, and I realized just how carefully she had crafted her image, hiding the sharp edge beneath the soft curves of our life. My son had always been quiet, the kind of child who watched more than he spoke, who noticed details that adults dismissed. But now, in the aftermath of my father's death and the missing insurance, his silence felt charged, purposeful. He lingered near us during conversations, pretending to play with his toys, yet I caught him watching my wife with an intensity that made me uneasy. There were glances he shared with me, fleeting and loaded, as if he understood far more than I did. One evening, I found him scribbling numbers in a small notebook, hidden beneath his bed, eyes darting nervously when I approached. He muttered something about keeping it safe, and my heart thumped with a mix of pride and alarm. He wasn't just a child observing. He was guarding secrets, calculating, aware. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized that he might have seen the truth before I had known about her schemes, her manipulations. And in that moment, the weight of suspense hit me. He knew more than I realized, and I had no idea how deep this betrayal went. I started going over every detail I could find, desperate for clarity. Bank statements didn't match what my wife had told me. Payments were missing, transfers unaccounted for. Important documents I was certain had been signed and filed were nowhere to be found. And each time I questioned her, her explanations felt rehearsed, polished, and evasive. Even her phone calls seemed suspicious. She would step out abruptly, speaking in hushed tones, ending conversations as soon as I entered the room. My mind raced, connecting dots I hadn't noticed before. The sudden withdrawals, the unexplained accounts, the offhand remarks she had made in the past that now screamed warning. I felt a tightening in my chest, equal parts fear and anger. Every instinct I had as a father and husband screamed that something was terribly wrong, and then it hit me. I couldn't trust the surface, couldn't rely on words or appearances. I had to dig deeper. I had to know the truth, no matter the cost. I finally decided I couldn't sit in silence any longer. I waited until the house was quiet, the kids occupied, and I asked her directly about the missing insurance money. Her face remained calm, almost amused, as if she had anticipated this moment. "Why are you making such a big deal out of nothing?" she said, tilting her head. I felt my blood boil, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "This isn't nothing. $800,000 is missing. I need an explanation." She shrugged, brushing it off like it was some minor inconvenience. "You worry too much. Maybe you forgot a detail. Maybe it's just a delay." Every word was calculated, a skillful deflection that made my chest tighten with frustration. I realized then that I couldn't reason with her, that she had perfected the art of gaslighting me into doubt. Rage and helplessness collided inside me, but beneath it all, a spark ignited. They couldn't get away with this. I would find the truth. I knew I couldn't confront her again without evidence. So I started digging quietly, combing through statements, receipts, and digital records when she wasn't around. Every small discovery felt like a victory. Hidden accounts, transfers she'd hoped I'd never notice, little inconsistencies in her explanations, they all added up. The more I uncovered, the more I realized just how carefully she had orchestrated this, but also how vulnerable her scheme really was. I caught her in lies that she thought were harmless, pointing to larger deceptions beneath the surface. With each revelation, a sense of control began to replace the fear that had consumed me. I wasn't helpless anymore. I had a plan forming. A quiet strategy fueled by the anger and betrayal that burned in my chest. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I felt a thrill I hadn't expected. Justice was no longer just a hope. I could see the path unfolding, and with each step, I was closer to taking it back from her. It happened on a quiet evening, the kind where shadows creep along the walls, and every creak in the house feels amplified. My son approached me cautiously, clutching a small, battered lockbox I had never seen before. His eyes were wide, serious, and there was a weight in his gaze that made my stomach churn. "I think you need to see this," he whispered. My hands trembled as I opened it, and inside lay the proof I had been chasing for weeks. Documents, statements, and receipts that clearly mapped out every step of her theft. Each piece told a story of deception I had only suspected, now undeniable. I felt my chest loosen with a strange combination of relief and disbelief. Relief that the truth was finally tangible, disbelief at the depth of her betrayal. Moral clarity settled over me like sunlight piercing clouds. I wasn't imagining it, and I wasn't powerless anymore. And in that moment, a pulse of suspense ran through me. The path forward was clear, but dangerous, and the audience's heartbeat matched my own as the stakes reached their peak. We sat together at the kitchen table, the lockbox between us like a small arsenal of truth. My son's eyes met mine, sharp and determined, and I realized how much he understood. "We need to be smart," I said quietly, leaning in. "One wrong move, and she could cover it up again." He nodded, his fingers fidgeting with a corner of the box. "What if we wait for the right moment? Something public?" I considered it, weighing the risks and the payoff. Each plan we discussed was meticulous, every detail deliberate. I reflected on the weeks of lies, manipulation, and stolen trust, and felt a mix of anger and resolve. The anticipation built in my chest as we mapped out who would see what and when, imagining the look on her face when the truth finally came to light. For the first time in weeks, I felt a surge of control, a sense that we could finally turn the tables, and the audience could feel the tension, waiting with us for the perfect reckoning. The day of reckoning arrived quietly, almost innocuously. We invited her to what she thought was a casual family gathering, unaware that every detail had been orchestrated. As soon as she walked in, I noticed the slight tilt of her head, the practiced smile that had fooled so many before. I waited until everyone was present, then began methodically laying out the evidence from the lockbox, letting each document speak for itself. Her confident posture faltered as whispers began to ripple through the room. That's not, she stammered, but no one listened. Each lie she had spun, every manipulation she had perfected, unraveled in front of everyone she had once charmed. I remained calm, steady, my voice measured, letting the weight of truth do the work. Anger and disbelief flashed across her face, contrasted sharply with my quiet triumph. The room pulsed with the tension of revelation, and as she finally realized there was no escape, a wave of moral satisfaction washed over me. Justice at last had been delivered in full view. The aftermath was almost surreal. Within days, the repercussions began to unfold. Banks froze her accounts, legal notices arrived, and family members who had turned a blind eye now confronted her with pointed questions. She tried to maintain her composure, but every interaction only highlighted the magnitude of her deception. Court dates were scheduled, documents presented, and slowly, methodically, the truth became undeniable to everyone involved. The humiliation was tangible. Her once proud posture now bent under scrutiny. I watched as the weight of her choices settled squarely on her shoulders, a stark contrast to the calm certainty I felt in my own skin. Relief washed over me in waves, knowing that not only had justice been served, but that karma had finally caught up with her. The audience could feel the satisfaction too. The lingering injustice had been corrected, and I could finally breathe, secure in the knowledge that the scales had balanced and the wrongs had been exposed. In the quiet that followed, my son and I finally allowed ourselves to feel the weight of everything that had happened. We sat together in the living room, not speaking at first, letting the silence hold the echoes of betrayal, grief, and anger. I reached for his hand, feeling the tremor in both our hearts, and realized how much we had endured. Not just the theft and lies, but the years of subtle manipulation that had gone unnoticed. Conversation flowed slowly, memories shared, fears admitted, and in that space our bond deepened. We laughed quietly at old family quirks, cried over losses we could never reclaim, and acknowledged the courage it took to confront the truth. Even with justice served, there was a bittersweet taste in the air. The wounds were raw, the scars permanent, but in facing them together we discovered resilience. The pain lingered, yes, but so did a profound sense of connection and survival, and a quiet hope that we could finally rebuild with honesty at the center of our lives. Slowly, life began to settle into a rhythm that felt truly mine for the first time in years. I regained control over our finances, carefully reviewing accounts, securing what was rightfully ours, and setting boundaries that no one could cross again. The house felt lighter, more like home than it ever had, filled with laughter and routines that reflected our choices, not hers. My son thrived in the newfound stability, his confidence growing as he realized that honesty and vigilance could safeguard the life we deserved. I started making plans for the future, small but meaningful steps towards security, comfort, and joy, steps that once felt impossible. The satisfaction wasn't loud or explosive. It was subtle, steady, and deeply fulfilling. Every bill paid, every document organized, every honest conversation reaffirmed that we had won not just legally, but morally. And as I watched my son play, carefree and unburdened, I understood that true victory lay in reclaiming our life with dignity, resilience, and a sense of hope that would carry us forward. Looking back, I realize how easily trust can be weaponized, how subtle deception can hide behind the most familiar faces. I share this not to relive pain, but to warn anyone watching. Pay attention, question inconsistencies, and never ignore the small signs. They often reveal the largest truths. Through this ordeal, I learned the value of vigilance, the power of patience, and the importance of protecting those you love, especially the quiet ones who notice more than we think. My son's insight and courage aim that wisdom isn't measured by age, and that strength often comes from the most unexpected places. Justice isn't always instantaneous, but when it arrives, it carries with it clarity, relief, and the undeniable weight of karma fulfilled. I hope this story serves as a reminder that even when betrayal cuts deep, truth has a way of rising to the surface, and empowerment comes from recognizing it, facing it, and reclaiming your life with integrity and resolve.